This video is for adults only. Viewer discretion is advised. Everything I'm sharing is my opinion.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. It's free and it helps me out a lot. Hello, friends. Come on in. Come on in. We have a lot of information to cover in the D4VD case. I also added an update. We're going to do it after this one. I added an update in the Alex Murdaugh case. So that live stream will follow this one. It'll be its own separate live stream. So come on in. Tell me where you're from. You can tell me what city, what state, what country, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. I'm just trying to get this open. There it goes. Okay, so it's been over 3 months since Celeste was found in the trunk of D4VD's black 2023 Tesla. And what was revealed about her condition is completely deranged. Why didn't anyone in David's entourage alert authorities? Were there red flags? Why would anyone help David as a profiler? And how did David get to this point psychologically? There's plenty of evidence that shows that David may have had an inappropriate relationship with Celeste. Lots and lots. There's plenty of evidence that he could have been arrested for months ago. And many people are wondering if he's getting the wealthy elite privilege that we talked about during yesterday's video. If you haven't checked that out, you'll want to watch that next. So today we're going to be deep diving into the psychology of David, the psychology of his enablers, the psychology of his accomplice. And we have a mountain of horrifying new information that I'm going to walk you through, and these incredibly disturbing details about the psychology of the accomplice and the enabler. So come on in, tell me where you're from, and let's go ahead and get started. I do want to just say that everybody's innocent until proven guilty, and David has not been charged with anything, and neither have any of the accomplices or enablers. So an enabler is someone who passively or actively allows harmful behavior to continue while providing support, covering up action, and basically just failing to intervene. And we had so many people around David who, in my opinion, failed to intervene on Celeste's behalf. So while an accomplice is somebody who actively participates in the crime, either by helping, by planning, by covering it up, an enabler is somebody that just lets things happen. So we know from the LAPD that David had at least one accomplice. So why would anyone help David do what happened to Celeste? Why would somebody allow this to happen? So was someone afraid of retaliation? Hear me out. So we learned from the LAPD that witnesses, plural, and informants, plural, were both groups were expressing a fear of retaliation if they talk to the grand jury. So is this why we don't have anyone from David's entourage, including his manager, Josh Marshall, or his other manager, Rob M., and that reported to authorities that David was involved in an illegal relationship with Celeste Rivas Hernandez? Please put in purple hearts, say her name, show your support for Celeste. So what are the main reasons that somebody would not report an illegal relationship to the police? Well, sometimes they'll justify this by claiming that they're being loyal and they view themselves as loyal friends and good people, and they rationalize telling themselves that they're not coming forward because they cared about David. So they might have experienced a moral conflict between knowing what was right and knowing what was wrong, but wanting to help someone that they care about, and they justified it to themselves, and they justified their behavior, or in this case, the lack thereof, by telling themselves that Celeste wasn't really being hurt. She was okay with it, even though she was 12 when he was 18, 13 when he was 19, and 14 when he was 20 years old. So an even more disturbing reason is the normalization of deviant behavior, which is what I think we have in this case. And I just want to share with you why this happens when harmful behavior occurs repeatedly without any consequence. And enablers around David may have come to view David's behavior with Celeste as normal, as acceptable, especially if their finances or social media clout was tied directly to David. So we know David's managers that their livelihood was definitely tied to David's success or his failure. So there was a conflict of interest. They had their self-interest and their money, their financial gain. Is that a motive? So did protecting David end up becoming protecting their own financial benefits? Now, Josh Marshall, he had his name on a $20,000 a month lease on a mansion. And it just makes me wonder, how much was David bringing in for these managers? So let's discuss the three ways that enablers can justify covering up for behavior like what David was allegedly doing with Celeste. Allegedly, in my opinion, first of all, they'll minimize or deny the harm. It's not a big deal. Celeste will be fine. David's entourage said, just telling themselves it's okay. She's okay with it, so we'll be okay with it. Two is providing resources, money, transportation, housing, tools that facilitate a crime. And in this case, Josh Marshall literally was providing David's housing. He had his name on the lease for that mansion. So who was in control of David's security cameras? Was it David or was it Josh Marshall? Because we know that the owner of the mansion says he gave control to Josh Marshall. And I've never heard Josh Marshall come forward to say, well, I gave the control of this to somebody else. A third reason is avoiding confrontation. They won't challenge or question the behavior to maintain a peaceful relationship. So we're members of David's entourage who are staying at the mansion, willing to look the other way to benefit their clicks and their views with a famous, wealthy person who they were, living at the house, and so benefiting, literally, financially, giving him a roof over their head. So what type of person is willing to sacrifice their morals and their values? Because I think we can all agree that most people would not do this. So what type of person? How is this type of person different? In my opinion, it would be somebody who really empathized, not with Celeste. Oh, no, not with Celeste at all, but with the perpetrator. And this would be someone who was focused on information that would have excused David's illegal behavior rather than calling it out. So now I want to talk about the accomplice in this case. What are the risk factors from someone becoming an accomplice? Why would somebody do this? So different environments and traits do exist that increase the likelihood of someone becoming an accomplice in a series of crimes like this. And I say a series of crimes because what happened to Celeste didn't happen over the course of a day. It didn't happen over the course of a week. It didn't happen over the course of a month. It happened over the course of years, literally years. People in the chat were calling him out as a predator, and nothing was done. So they could be as simple as peer pressure or social conformity in like a tight-knit clique group, but it could also be something far more sinister, like depending on David for their finances, their security, their social status, being able to take selfies with this rising music star. So was David's accomplice willing to help him do what he did to Celeste for some more followers on social media, or so they could live at the mansion? So some examples, we have seen Celeste at this concert where, supposedly David's family was at the theater. Now, apparently, this concert did go over 3 nights, so it could be that she didn't meet his family. That's possible that she came a different night and that he did keep them separate. But a lot of people feel like that picture that I showed you during the last live stream was her sitting up in the balcony with his family. So family members hide crimes to protect their loved ones. They'll cover for someone. We saw this in the Elizabeth Holmes case, right? Where her friends were willing to enable her. So they pretended, even work people pretended and helped cover up and pretend that her Edison machine actually worked. And imagine what kind of depravity it takes for somebody to give somebody fake results from a machine that doesn't work about their blood work. What if they were on a medication like Coumadin, some type of blood thinning medication, but if your blood gets too thin, you can have, bleeding from everywhere? What if it was, the machine failed to pick up something like that? What if the machine gave a false cancer negative when somebody had cancer? So workplace enablers, we saw this also in the Bernie Madoff case, was a financial enabler, and we're going to talk about him in just a second. But the, they will enable executives to commit financial or ethical crimes, and we did see this in the Bernie Madoff case, where he had that one floor where the customers all came that had people that didn't know what was going on, and there was a floor right below that one where all of the accomplices for his Ponzi scheme were working, while he stole people's retirement, he stole their savings, he stole everything from them, all for a little bit of money for himself. So did David enablers and his accomplices justify their actions and lack of actions by failing to report that Celeste was at the mansion, failing to report that he was in a relationship over a period of years? If they just met Celeste one day, they can maybe say they didn't know. But if they were interacting with Celeste over a period of a year or more, or 2 years, and we know she started running, away multiple times in 2024, now what do you say if you're living at the mansion and she's there too? So was this all for a little bit of social media status or a little bit of money? The manager or an assistant can rationalize it, hiding and ignoring red flags. They want to protect the celebrity's brand. They believe, they'll tell themselves that they're preserving a public image to protect the company. And a lot of people have wondered if the lack of the fact that nobody's been arrested for anything or even indicted yet, and we have an investigative grand jury in play, even though there's all this evidence of him having this relationship with her. A lot of people are wondering, if this was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl, would he have been put in jail? If he wasn't a wealthy, powerful elite, would he have been put in jail or arrested? I mean, Brian Kohlberger, they arrested him, but I don't get it. So, according to the Daily Mail, Celeste's friends reportedly last heard from her in late July, early August of 2025. Now, we don't know if this was really Celeste or if this was somebody pretending to be Celeste using Celeste's phone. We don't know if these were text messages or if she was actually speaking to them. But the last final photograph that we know about from private investigator Steve Fisher is January 2nd of 2025. So was David posing as Celeste and texting her loved ones? Because we had something similar happen in the Gabby Petito case, right? He did away with Gabby, and then to give himself an alibi, he hiked up to a public area, took a shower, called his parents, and as soon as he was on the phone with them, they immediately got him a lawyer. So I believe he told them what happened. But then he used Gabby's phone to send fake text messages to Gabby's parents. He sent them specifically to her mom, posing as Gabby. And so, again, David's not been accused of anything. He's innocent until proven guilty. But who was sending the text? If they were text messages, who was really sending those? So now let's talk about, why did David leave Celeste in the front trunk of the Tesla? Like, what was he thinking? I just want to go through like a profiling of somebody who would do something like this. So this is alleged, in my opinion. I don't know for sure David left the Celeste in the front trunk. He hasn't been charged with anything, but so number one is dehumanization of Celeste. Treating Celeste as an object rather than a person could have made it psychologically easier for somebody with a personality disorder to leave her in the front trunk without immediate action. And we're going to deep dive more about personality disorders and what type of mentality would do something like this, because a lot of people have once said, well, it can't be David because he wouldn't be dumb enough to leave her in the trunk. And I'm going to share with you why I'm not saying it was David, but why it could have been David. Number two is obsession or symbolic possession of Celeste. Again, viewing her as an object. And in rare cases, offenders will leave victims in a location as a form of control or to maintain a psychological connection. And in this case, I think both of these apply. I think that there was a level of dehumanizing of Celeste, as evidenced by the fact of how she was found in pieces, in plastic. and viewing her as an object rather than as a human being. Because I think anybody who truly loved and cared about Celeste would not have done that to her. So I do think that both of these apply in this case. So, what type of personality could view a human as an object? Well, there's two. One would be narcissistic personality traits, and with the core feature of being grandiosity, a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy. And they tend to treat people, and maybe you've had a narcissist in your life, they will use people to satisfy their personal needs. They want admiration, they want attention, they want status. And this, I believe, may apply more to the enablers and maybe the accomplice than it does to David. But in this case, I do think David did use Celeste to satisfy his personal needs. And if you look at the way that he talked about his love interest, he talks about her in terms of being emotionally responsible for him in his lyrics. If you just think about the lyrics, so not Celeste specifically, but just, about his love, they're always the love is responsible for his emotional well-being. And he portrays himself as a bad guy who's trying to be a nice guy, who's trying to be a good guy. So this female, and I believe this was Celeste, was probably having it put on her emotionally that she was responsible for David, that she's somehow responsible for him. So she would just imagine the weight of that crushing responsibility on a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old, that she's responsible for saving David from being a bad person. So I believe that he was emotionally manipulating Celeste, in my opinion, allegedly. And I think he was making her feel responsible. Remember, she was only 12, she was only 13, she was only 14 when she initially met him. And so he's making her, a little girl, responsible for a grown man. So this is a lot of pressure to put on a middle school child. Another problem that I see in this is what's called an objectification indicator. So seeing people only as a reflection of yourself, and that's what a narcissist does, right? They see you as a reflection or a means to an end. And I think David would have been very comfortable to continue to manipulate Celeste to benefit himself. I think he liked the way that he looked in her eyes. So I think he was using her emotionally to make her responsible for his feelings. But I would say that he also used her as a muse in a more exploitative way too. And what I mean by this is that I think that he was exploiting her and her feelings and using it for his art and what he calls art. I don't think he's artistic. I think he's evil, allegedly, in my opinion, and his lyrics. And again, use the word art very, very loosely because I just don't think that this is artistic. I think this is exploitation, not art. And so I do believe that he was exploiting her feelings and ultimately her life for his lyrics and his art so he could be famous. I think he's a very disturbed person allegedly, in my opinion. So an example of this might be a narcissist might use someone emotionally or socially without regard for their feelings. And in this case, I do believe he was using Celeste emotionally. And I think he was making her responsible for his being a bad guy and that it was her responsibility to love him anyway. And without that, he wouldn't be a good guy. So as you guys know, if you've been with the channel for a little while, you know that not all narcissists are psychopaths, but all psychopaths are narcissists. So this is antisocial personality traits. I'm not diagnosing them, I'm just using them as an adjective. But let's talk about psychopathy. So one of the core features of psychopathy is a lack of remorse, a lack of empathy, a lack of emotional depth, a lack of, they're very impulsive, they're very manipulative, they're very charming. And so I don't think David would have felt any empathy or love or any real feeling for Celeste, allegedly, in my opinion. And we're going to talk about remorse. So put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. But I don't think that he felt any empathy for Celeste, and that this is evidenced by the fact that he did view her as an object. He literally, allegedly, put her in the front trunk of his Tesla. So it's going to be very hard for him at this point, in my opinion, for him to argue that this was some kind of an accident. So the whole idea that people are trying to spin that, this could have been accidental and he just put her in the trunk and it's just going to be a misdemeanor. If somebody does that, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to be absolutely gutted. I don't know how else to describe it, because I think it's very hard for anybody to argue at this point that this was some type of an accident and that he just disposed of her afterward, because what he did was so callous and so uncaring, and most normal people, if there was actually an accident, would call 911. So this is why I believe this did not happen, because even if David didn't call 911, it's hard to believe that all of the people living at the mansion would have been fine and dandy with, him just stuffing her in the front trunk. I think there's at least one, but I don't know if all of them would have been okay with it. But to be clear, I think that some more than one was okay with him having a relationship with her, even though they are claiming now they think she was older. I'm not convinced. But I think that if it was an accident, most normal people would call 911, which is why I don't believe this was an accident. The other thing that makes me think that it's not an accident are the lyrics and the videos that he was using. They foreshadow what he was focused on doing. They foreshadow what interested him. And what interested David is extremely disturbing. In his romantic homicide video, he's standing over a girl that looks a lot like Celeste, and it looks like he's done away with her. So I think he was very focused on causing harm and leading up to what happened to Celeste, which is why I don't believe that David has any remorse, allegedly, in my opinion. Somebody who was remorseful might have tried to give her a proper burial, but like in the JonBenet Ramsey case, they put her favorite nightgown with her. They covered her up. They were trying, whoever did it was trying to be respectful. David didn't do any of those things. Instead, he continued to exploit her, in my opinion. He left her like an object in the front trunk of his Tesla. And by keeping her, and I'm going to tell you why he left her in the front trunk in just a second, but by keeping her in the front trunk of the Tesla, he would have been able to keep her in a very small, confined space, which would have made him feel like he had power and that he had dominion over Celeste. So many people purely view others, psychopaths, people with this type of personality disorder. And in this case, I do believe that David views other people as pawns. Specifically, I think he viewed Celeste as a pawn, an object to achieve his goal of becoming rich and famous. She was an object in his life. She was not a real person in his mind. And so I think this is evidenced by the fact that he did entice her away from her family multiple times. I think to do this, he would have had to have manipulated her. And ultimately, the callous act of putting her in pieces in the front trunk of his Tesla, in my opinion, allegedly. So, what are some of the indicators uh, of somebody who's able to objectify or view someone else as an object? Well, emotional detachment is one, exploitation, viewing people as obstacles and tools, how they can help you or hurt you, rather than as actual human beings with their own wants and needs and desires. And I think we see David being attached and willing to exploit people and viewing people as obstacles in his music video. We have the music video where he's literally, standing with his blindfold on, with his messed up Itami alter ego, watching blindfolded as they drag a person and put him in the trunk of the car, which is exactly what happened to Celeste just 3 years after he wrote that song. So he was thinking about this. And his music videos are very disturbing, especially in retrospect. And so, in my opinion, there had to be red flags for people that were looking at these lyrics, looking at the music, his managers who were looking at his choices for the video, because I do believe that these choices were made by him. And so I think there was a lot of red flags about David. And I'm just wondering, if this is why he was ultimately prevented from going to high school. Was he removed from school because there's something we don't know? So what's an example of this? So a person might harm or manipulate someone without any guilt. Moreover, I think it's very possible that not only did he not feel guilt or remorse, but I think he would have felt a thrill from this, a personal gain from this. So why would David have ultimately done away with Celeste, his muse, and not feel any guilt? I don't think he would have I just think he would have been focused on his own personal gain and game of it, the thrill of it. And I think he had been fantasizing and thinking about doing this to a girl who just happened to look a lot like Celeste. We have the other music video with the girl that looks just like Celeste, covered in red paint, lying on the bed looking like she's been done away with, and he's standing over her. So I think he was planning this. So I want to talk more about the antisocial personality disorder. And then I am going to check in with chat. So come on in, tell me where you're from, because I do think that this is really important and it explains why he put her into the trunk. So antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, I'm not diagnosing him, I'm just using it as an adjective, but it's one of the most severe forms. We hear it more often talked about as sociopath or psychopath, so psychopathy. And these individuals often display a combination of traits that allow them to harm other people without any remorse. Now, let's talk about some of the key characteristics of this personality profile. They include a lack of empathy and remorse, just like the narcissist. They exhibit a profound ability to understand and share the feelings of other people, but they show little or no guilt or regret for any actions that they do that harm other people. And I think the fact that David did not have any regret is evidenced by the fact that Celeste was found in the front trunk and David was on tour. Did he stop touring when he heard that there was a girl found in the front trunk of his Tesla? No. He's continued to hold mock funerals with an adolescent-sized casket. When he heard there was a Shhh tattoo, did he then go back and say, oh my gosh, that must be Celeste. Somebody in my entourage put her in the trunk of the car? Did he do that? Nope. He didn't stop touring. Even though he would have known that tattoo was hers, because I believe that he was probably the adult. You can't get a tattoo in California if you're under 18. And the tattoo artist that ran into Celeste at a party, that's how he knew she wasn't. But nobody reported it. So again, he learns that there's a Shhh tattoo on the finger. He has a matching tattoo. Still doesn't stop doing, still holding his, adolescent-sized casket, mock funerals. No expression of empathy, no expression of regret, not even a question. Like, who is it? In my opinion, he doesn't have and he didn't have any empathy for Celeste. And he was okay with doing what he did. And he knew. And this is why I think it's going to be really hard for an attorney to come back if and when he is indicted and try to say, oh, well, he didn't know it was Celeste and or it was an accident, whatever he wants to say. His behavior after is just as awful as the behavior before. The lack of empathy, the lack of remorse. I want to talk about some other traits, beginning with manipulation and deceitfulness, because people who are psychopaths, they are known to be very charming. So think about Ted Bundy. He was very good at using his wit, his charm, and his deceit to manipulate and exploit other people, specifically young girls and women, for personal gain, power, or pleasure, because he enjoyed what he did. And he would go around with a cast on his arm, right? He would have a cast on his arm, and he would ask these young women to help because he knew that, they probably would say yes. And when he, help him get something in or out of his car because he had his broken arm. So David does seem very personable in the interviews. He's very handsome. I think he does, he's very good looking. He's very charming, superficially. But there are some disturbing concepts that were apparent in not only just his TikTok videos, but also in his videos and lyrics about him harming girls and women. So even when his mother, who according to his Zach Sang show, his mother said, according to David, that she thought his lyrics were too much, he said that he took it as a good sign, that his mother thought they were, there was disturbing or upsetting to her. And so that was a good thing. And I told you guys, I thought he had mommy issues. allegedly, in my opinion, and that I think that he would have enjoyed the fact that his mother was uncomfortable with this. So, another disturbing characteristic of psychopathy is this callous emotional detachment. They approach their victims with a cold, calculated, predatory mindset, viewing them just like in the narcissist category as objects or pawns to be used for their own ends or their own purposes. And in this, and the fact is that, in my opinion, allegedly, he chose to leave Celeste in the front trunk, shows that he did view her as an object and not as a human being. And the fact that he enticed her away from her family multiple times and engaged in an alleged illegal relationship also shows an odd lack of detachment. So I think he did view her with a predatory mindset. And I think he ultimately did away with her, allegedly, in my opinion, with the same mindset. So, another characteristic of a psychopath, and we're going to talk about why this applies to the trunk, is this persistent pattern of irresponsible behavior, impulsivity, and a failure to plan ahead. This, I believe, does apply to how she ended up in the trunk of the car. They'll often disregard social norms and legal constraints. And we see this impulsivity and this irresponsibility in the way that he left Celeste in the front trunk of his Tesla. A lot of you guys have asked me, why would maybe somebody framed him? Because who would leave Celeste in the front trunk of his Tesla? Wouldn't this be incriminating? Well, yeah, but if you think about the characteristics and the profile of somebody who is a psychopath, I think it does help explain why he would have been comfortable with this. And I still am standing by my original when I on the video I did the psychology of David. If you haven't watched that, you'll want to watch that too. You can see this what why I think he went back to Santa Barbara. I think he went back to get her. That's what I think. But we see this impulsivity and irresponsibility in the way that he left Celeste in the front trunk of the Tesla, and also the fact that he parked it on Bluebird at least twice that we know about, right? He had her parked on Bluebird in the front trunk of the Tesla, I believe, and then moved the car back to the mansion and then moved it back to Bluebird Avenue. And I think every time he left town, he wanted to make sure his entourage couldn't get into the car. So he would park it somewhere else. But we know at least twice it was on Bluebird Avenue. So I think that this was really impulsive. It was really irresponsible. And, if he is finally convicted, it will ultimately be his downfall. In my opinion, allegedly, he didn't just dispose of her. He parked her in the car. So I think that this does go to that irresponsibility and tendency to be impulsive and not think everything all the way through. He was also young. He was 20. So another characteristic of psychopathy is a grand sense of self. They have a sense of ego, a sense of entitlement, and maybe you've encountered somebody like this. Which helps them rationalize and justify their actions. So I believe that David would have viewed himself as being above the laws, above social norms of, not having a relationship with a child. That's not a high bar. He could have had lots of girls. He was a successful musician, wealthy. He could have had any girls, but instead, he was completely comfortable exploiting Celeste and using her in every way possible and ultimately denigrating her. So I think he would have rationalized his actions. And finally, sociopaths do have a disregard for other people's safety. There's a history of physical aggression, hostility, a reckless disregard for safety and rights of other people. So you can see this hostility, in my opinion, being expressed through his music and through the lyrics. And I've shared with you that before he had been showing this type of imagery. Um, Imagine, and I've shared with you this before, imagine if he was showing this kind of imagery of what he was doing to a girl, where he had a young girl in the bed dressed all in white, covered in red paint. Imagine if he put a puppy covered in red paint with the candles all around and standing over it looking evil. Would that have been okay with people? Uh, you know, I just want to know, like, why was this viewed as being acceptable from anybody? regarding females? Like, have we gotten to the point in our society where we just do not value our girls at all? Because I'm really concerned. What if instead of dragging a person to the back trunk of his car, what if he'd been dragging a puppy, standing there blindfolded with his stupid looking red painted shirt that he was selling for $35 a pop? Uh, I think that, why was this okay to do to females? Why didn't his managers, why didn't the editor of the videos, the person who filmed it, why didn't any of these people, think, why didn't they say, you know what, this just isn't a good idea. This is, might put the wrong ideas into somebody's head. So I think the fact that he did this to females and that nobody around him seemed to be outraged. And in fact, if anything, I've just seen people, rewarding him for this. Financially, his manager rented him a mansion for $20,000 a month. I mean, come on. He's being told he's a genius while he's doing this. You're talented. How did you think of these incredible songs depicting harming females? How did you think of this great music depicting making females emotionally responsible for you while you're portraying yourself as a bad guy? What do you guys think? Are you watching closely? So, did David have access to Celeste's phone? And do the LAPD have this phone? And I want to talk about what David was doing in late July and early August, too. We're going to do a little bit of a timeline here. But I do want to check in with chat. I just want to say thank you so much. I want to say thank you to Michael for the $99.99, pardon me. Super thanks. And thank you so much. This is our head mod, Michael. Thank you so much for modding today, Mike. I will be putting that toward editing equipment. Thank you to NJAS for gifting a Reporter Room channel membership. If you got that membership, please make sure that you say thank you to NJAS. Thank you, NJAS. He's scheduling a members only live stream later this week. And if you got, oh my gosh, NJAS gifted 5 Reporter Room memberships. If you got one, and this is our other head mod and our executive producer, NJAS, if you got one of those, please make sure you say thank you to NJAS. Congratulations to everybody who got a channel membership. That's awesome. And then I want to say thank you to NJAS for the 20 pounds. That is so nice of you. Thank you so much, NJAS. Thank you very, very much. That is really, really kind of you. So we are going to check. I do want to check in, and I want to do Deanna, hey, thanks for modding. She says he sang before all these songs, the Hood Diaries. They wiped the internet clean of the songs. Oh wow! I mean, he was definitely wiping stuff clean, wasn't he? He definitely was wiping things. These are beautiful purple hearts, LaDonna. Absolutely gorgeous. Leonardo says that's interesting. Celeste was David's guardian to keep him out of trouble, and David didn't want her to take over. I think he made her emotionally responsible. I agree with you, Leonardo. I think she was responsible for David. And I think that's really sad because she was, just in middle school. And she certainly, wasn't up to being responsible for an adult. So let's think about what David was doing in the weeks leading and months leading up to Celeste being found. On July 15th through the 28th of 2025, David, Neo, Asia, and Celeste Herrera, CC Herrera, attended multiple parties in Los Angeles. We know this because they shared about this on Instagram. And I want to give a shout out to NJAS, our executive producer, for sending me this timeline. Thank you, NJAS. I believe she said she found it on Reddit. On July 16th of 2025, we have David's Discord conversation between mods and chats, and members were discussing who was part of David's original group. And he had a mod named Skylar, and she actually mentions Celeste during this conversation. So I think that's interesting. On July 17th of 20, so she, we know Celeste was talking to him when she was probably 11 or 12 years old on Discord. July 17th of 2025, we have David's Twitch stream teasing his Withered Deluxe songs. So he's promoting himself. July 20th of 2025, the LAPD received that noise complaint that went to David's mansion. The noise complaint came in around 4 a.m., but unfortunately, the LAPD didn't respond to more than 4 hours later. So, it probably wasn't a priority. I don't know what else was going on in LA, but I'm just, wondering what that was about. It could have just been some loud music because we know she was in the trunk for at least 5 weeks. So that's why I'm just backing up from September to July, just looking at what was going on in July. On July 29th of 2025, David's black 100,000 Tesla is moved by somebody onto Bluebird Avenue again for the final time. Remember, David parked that Tesla before and he didn't get it towed the last time. So was he thinking it wouldn't get towed this time? And just hours after the Tesla was moved with Celeste inside the front trunk, we believe, because there's no evidence that she was put in after that, David and Neo both board the tour bus and leave the mansion. And then who put that Christmas tree air freshener inside the Tesla? And when did they do it? And I believe that was significant to David. And I want to show you why I think the air freshener was significant. Let me just move myself out of the way. Let me show you this. Okay, so let me see if I move myself. Okay, so this is from his video. And you can see the red strings in the corners of this. And if you look up above the word when, what do you see just above that? In his video for his, it's a Christmas tree air freshener, you guys. It's a Christmas tree air freshener. So I believe that everything, and he had it with red strings hanging from the rearview mirror, just like the Tesla was found. So was this coordinated with other people? Was this a coincidence? Because once Celeste is discovered, we have multiple people along with David who wipe their social media clean, including Neo. So to me, in my opinion, allegedly, it looks like it was coordinated. Now, he was Neo's boss, so he could have just done this without thinking that it was a bad thing. But, I think it's very, very upsetting. I have updates in the Alex Murdaugh case too. If you're just joining me after this is done, we're going to go over and do a separate live stream on Alex Murdaugh because Hulu did not tell you this. And there's some interesting things that popped up on this. Come on in. Tell me where you're from. Do you think that David's accomplices should have done something, that somebody that, anybody that saw her should have said something or did something? Do you think she looked like she was older than she was? Rianne said, if that's true, it's probably because money talks. Yeah, PDF file. Exactly. Shelley said, the narcissist that I have currently in my life, who is hurting my daughter and me, giggles. He literally giggles like a little Tasmanian devil when he gets by with it. He giggles. Haha, I'm so smart. Wow. That's called duping delight. Duping delight, when they're getting away with it. And we saw this, if you think back to the interview that Chris Watts gave on his sermon on the porch, where he gives these multiple interviews. You can see him literally smiling while he's talking about his family being missing. And you can see the same thing with Susan Smith, right? Susan Smith, she's literally smiling when she's talking about her boys being, supposedly abducted. Of course, we know that's not what happened to them, but she's smiling. So yeah, that's duping delight. They literally enjoy duping you and fooling you. Graber said, it must be so easy to do with AI with Celeste because it all looks like that. I don't know what you're talking about, Graybird. Graybird, can you be more specific? I'm not using any AI. So are you talking about his songs? Because I did do this. For those of you that weren't with me for the last live stream, and I thought maybe this is what Graybird is referencing, but I did go into Chat GPT and put in Celeste and Obsessed. And I got a song back from Chat GPT that was like not that different from, it wasn't exactly the same, but very similar to the song that, that he wrote about her. So yeah, it could have been definitely. I don't know if he was using AI or not. I have no idea, but um, it definitely would be it. So yeah, Deanna says, I wonder how he feels now that he's down the tubes and Celeste is everywhere every day. I don't know. I don't know how he feels. I don't think he feels remorseful. If anything, he'll feel sorry for himself. That's pretty much the typical response from somebody like David. He won't feel any empathy for Celeste. If he had empathy, if he wanted people to think that it wasn't him, then the smart thing to do would have been to cancel his tour and come home and say, how did she end up in my trunk? I want a full investigation. Hire his own private investigator. Make it look like he cared, like somebody did it. He didn't do any of those things. Express remorse to her family. Offer to pay for the funeral. He didn't do any of those things. So, but I did hear that he was like one of the most downloaded or most listened to singers on YouTube. So I think, we probably need to. I know probably people have gone back to listen to the lyrics of the song because they want to hear it for themselves. LaDonna says, right, his videos are not art, in my opinion, just like Jessica sat there trying to justify how horrific he is. I agree. Antonia said, all caps is yelling. That's correct. Yeah, we don't do all caps. It tells the algorithm that somebody's upset. DDWM says, you are a fierce advocate for Celeste, and all women say her name. And men too. If this was being done to a boy, I would have the same response. So, victims, period. Yeah, thank you, DDWM. You're the same. Michael, this is our head mod. Michael, thank you for modding today. And thank you for modding today, Didi. If she was white, he would be locked. That's what I'm wondering too. This was like a conversation I really didn't want to have, but we're here. We're like over 3 months into this, right? She was found in September the 9th. So tomorrow, it will be September, October, November, December. It'll be 3 months tomorrow. Today, this would be 3 months from the day before she was found. If he wasn't rich, if he wasn't famous, and if she was, blonde and blue-eyed, would he already be in jail? Like what, why, what do we, some charges could be brought. Maybe you can't bring everything right now, but like, why is this going on? Why are we continuing to sit here? When I heard that they had made him a suspect and they were investigating this as a homicide, I thought, oh, thank goodness. And I went into being watchful for somebody being arrested. And what I mean by that is I was checking and refreshing the news feed on my phone regularly to see if he was getting arrested. And now here we are a couple weeks later and nothing. Not one, no updates, no information. Just, I know a grand jury, investigative grand jury especially, can take time, but this supposedly started back in mid-November. So what are we doing? What are we waiting for? If he wasn't rich and famous, he would already be in jail, in my opinion. What is going on in this case? Thank you for the purple hearts for Celeste Adele. Jazz is telling you, Shelley, to distance yourself ASAP. I agree. The best way you're never going to change. They're not going to change. It's a personality disorder. And Jazz says, I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. Yeah, because YouTube sees all caps as a sign of aggressive speech. Right. So, yeah, no worries. Thank you for modding today, Cabling. Puppy says, Puppy, no, yeah, exactly. So they would have been outraged from PETA and all these organizations, but he's doing this with a young female and crickets. Here's Josh Marshall telling us, yeah, I have a 14-year-old. She's so upset. My family's so upset. Okay. Well, why didn't you think about your 14-year-old daughter when you were allowing this man to depict women in this fashion and to talk about them in this fashion? Where are your morals and values, sir? LaDonna said it's not okay. And yes, on all of his people. Graber said D4VD admits he has a double in his YouTube. A double what? I'm not sure I understand. A double person? Antonia says justice for Celeste Rivas Hernandez. That's beautiful, Antonia. Colt says color has nothing to do with it. It's the money they invested in this creep. He is connected. Yeah, that's why I raised both. Because it could be nothing to do with it. And it could just be that he's rich and well connected and has, big money behind him. So we're waiting. And, it's being investigated by LAPD in LA, where some of these companies are located. But man, I'm starting to think this is the delay is bordering on ridiculous. I'm just gonna advocate for Celeste here and just say that I feel really frustrated that here we are months later and her family had to go through another Thanksgiving without their daughter, and nobody has been arrested for this. Nobody has been charged. Nobody's been held accountable. What is going on? What is the pause? Shelley said he needs life in prison and then he can entertain the troops in prison if he even gets any prison time. I bet he does 5 years and gets by with it. Cabling doesn't like his music. I don't like his music, not because of any other reason except for what he's depicting in his music. To me, it's wrong. Thank you for modding today, Cabling. Rian says the street named Bluebird is almost talking about Celeste. Very interesting. Greg Graybird says, it looks to me like someone is painting a picture. You talking about David? He was painting those shirts. That's what he was painting. Purple Angel said, probably, thank you for modding today, Jody. Says, probably, sadly, especially rich and white, in my opinion. Thank you for modding today, Dee. She wants to know, Shelley, if you need any help. Why don't you, if you guys want to drop a link for like a call, like a 411 type of call for somebody who might need help from somebody who's, enduring narcissistic I can't say it on the air. Las Vegas Girl said, it's a great song to dance to. I like it. Pretty Troll says, hold on. If I go to somebody else's channel and comment in all caps, is it going to register against the creator? Yeah. Not in the comment section, but in the top chat, it'll register as being mad. And if it happens over and over and over, like if we have 4 or 5 people doing it, they're going to think that there's something going on in the chat that's upsetting people. And then that's where we, end up having problems. And thank you. And Las Vegas Girl, thank you for modding today. She says, thank you, Mike and Njaz. You two are the best. Deanna, thank you for modding. She says, he sang before all of these songs, the Hood Diaries, they wiped the internet clean. Greg Ebert said, he's the circus, D4VD. Michael is telling you to be very careful, Shelley. Everybody's worried about Shelley. If anybody wants to drop in a link of like a number she can call, because these people don't change. They won't stop, Shelley. It won't like I wouldn't, I'm sorry to share, it won't go away. Corona Dude said D4VD guy, no, he's a monster. Bad guy, no, he's a monster. Right, but he didn't depict it. Well, he did he did depict himself as a monster. His alter ego, Itami, which literally means pain, is a monster, isn't it? It's almost like it is a monster. So yeah, you're right, Corona Dude. I agree. Brianne thinks you're awesome, and Jazz. Jazz says, appreciate it again, and Jazz. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, please make sure to drop a thank you to our mods. They donate their time. They volunteer their time to come in and make it so that I can go live. LaDonna says, justice for Celeste. Antonia says, and Jazz, you're awesome. Leonardo said, the interesting. Celeste was David's guardian to keep him out of trouble, and David didn't want her to take over. I love the purple hearts for Celeste. If you're watching, come on up and talk to me for a minute. Linda thinks you're right. No worries, Pretty Troll. I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much. And everybody's really appreciate you. Glad you're here with us. Shelley said the mother is a major problem. I think, in my opinion, why she isn't doing anything. I wonder. I heard she was out the other day Christmas shopping. I'm going to urge caution with the family. We don't, there's a lot we don't know about the family, and I know people are, you know, concerned because there's, maybe she did come home, and if they had reported her missing, then maybe LAPD, would have had very up to date information to go look for her, and we know that's not what happened. But I just want to just say that these people have already lost their daughter. I mean, they've all, and we don't know what the circumstances were. Maybe they just got to a point where she had run away so many times where I don't know what happened. I don't know, but I want to be really careful not to pile onto the family. That's what I do want to say. Um, if she had been found in their trunk, I would be going hard on the family, but she wasn't. And so we haven't seen any evidence of anything other than they didn't report her missing. They didn't report that she had come back for her cousin's graduation. Her cousin was a minor. Some people were trying to blame it on the cousin. But I'm just urging caution with the family. And I think it's fine if they're out shopping for Christmas presents. Celeste has other siblings. These parents still have to keep going. I bet they're going to work. They do have to keep moving forward. Does this mean they didn't love their daughter? No. We'll probably find out more about that later. Michael says justice for Celeste. Delana says, does he really have so much money? I feel like the tour canceled and people are not backing him anymore. It may lead to huge debt and loss. Yeah, maybe. I mean, he had his tour canceled, but his music, he's still making tons of money on YouTube with his music. Michael says, delete it, all mods. Though when he told his mods to delete everything. Yeah. What's with the Band-Aid? I don't know. I was going to ask you guys. What was up for, like, if you're wondering, what is she asking me about? This picture of him painting with the Band-Aid, some people thought it was, this one bothers me too. He looks really happy about that paint on his face. Let me see if I can find the one with the Band-Aid. This one right here. Let me just let it play through. And he posted that picture of him holding the knife there, this one. So these, shirts that he was selling to kids, his he's wearing all this pink Hello Kitty stuff and posing with stuffed animals because that's who his audience was, right? That's who he was attracting. So he's selling an adult, a grown-up wouldn't buy a $35 white shirt covered in red paint. They wouldn't think that was cool. So he's, but what was happening with his nose? I wish I knew. Cabling wants to know what's up with that Band-Aid. I wish I knew, Cabling. Thank you for modding today. Same as the star. Yep. And then what's up with this picture? Is it red paint or is it something else? Jess says it will all catch. And Jess says, we have no idea what the family are going through. Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to pile on to the family. I just feel like they've already had to bury their child. There's nothing you guys could say that they're not saying to themselves. And I think I didn't show the pictures of them shopping for Christmas because I'm not going to exploit her family for clicks and views. I just, I don't know. I looked at the pictures. I did see the articles and just decided not to do that. I don't know. It just didn't feel right to me. I feel like I thought people were going to look at that as being a critical thing. And I think it's, okay. They have other kids to shop for. They have other family members to shop for. And if, should their other kids not get a Christmas because of what happened to Celeste? I think they should still try to put things back together as best they can. Francis Rose says, I get the feeling they're trying their best to cover all this up. He's not going to get away with it. I cannot believe he's not behind bars already. This world is sick and completely breaks my heart. LaDonna says 11 years old. And Shelly said, I agree with you, Francis. Shelly said, thank you, Las Vegas girl, for telling me to stay safe and be careful. I appreciate that. You got to watch your step. Yeah. She's not viewing you as a human being or your daughter. He views you as an object that either makes them look good or makes them not look good. Jazz says it will all catch up to them. Well, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going over right now to do a Alex Murdaugh live stream. I do want to just give a shout out to Njaz, who is our executive producer. Thank you so much. And she's also one of our head mods with Michael L. Cole. Thank you to our producers. Oop. Sasha Angel, George Brown, Michael L. Cole, and Christy Ballantyne. And thank you to our channel members. If you would like to be subscribed, subscribing is completely free. And giving this a thumbs up is also completely free. And dropping me a comment in the comment section below is also completely free. And all of these things help the channel. But if you would like to financially help the channel, one of the nicest ways to do it is by becoming a channel member. I get to interact with you more as a channel member. And you also have your name appear just like this. And it's also a chance for me to connect with you. We do have regular channel members only videos and live streams and things like that. So please feel free to consider doing that. And I also want to do super thanks and coffee gratitude from the last live stream that I did a couple of days ago, and also gifted channel memberships. Thank you so much, you guys. All right, I'm heading over to do Alex Murdaugh. So follow me over if you are into that case, because this case is crazy and Alex is trying to get out of jail. He has another scheme up his sleeve. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. It's free and it helps me out a lot. Give this a thumbs up and drop me a comment. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below.